Meanwhile, back at the ranch, part 3. Yesterday we saw how the pattern of a strong king seizing the throne and reigning for many years, just to turn it over to a son who was weak and unable to retain it, developed in the northern kingdom of Israel. Jeroboam, the man who rebelled against Solomon's son Rehoboam and ruled first in the northern kingdom, ruled for 22 years, but his son Nadab only lasted 2 years. 1 Kings 14 verses 20 and 15 verse 25. Baasha destroyed Nadab and the house of Jeroboam as punishment for sin, 1 Kings 15:29, and ruled for 24 years until he died and turned it over to his son Elah. Elah lasted 2 years before being killed by another usurper, Zimri, 1 Kings 16 verses 8 to 11. Just when we thought it was going to get monotonous, a man named Omri came along to shake everything up by shattering the pattern. Before Zimri had time to explore every room in his new palace, Omri, a fellow captain of the army, was raised up as a rival. Zimri ruled for a mere 7 days, and when he saw his city surrounded, burned the palace down on his own head, 1 Kings 16 verses 15 through 20. Talk about going out in a blaze of, well, not glory. This is where history gets very interesting, at least to people like me, because Omri set up a dynasty that lasted through 4 generations and almost 45 years. Though to put that in perspective, remember that David, Solomon, and Asa each reigned for 40 years in Judah. Beyond the seizing of the throne and setting up Samaria as his capital, very little is said about Omri. Well, there is the little thing about his sin being worse than Jeroboam. Omri did evil in the sight of the Lord and acted more wickedly than all who were before him, 1 Kings 16, verse 25. Oh, and there was the raising of his son Ahab to the throne, who raised the practice of evil to even greater heights, 1 Kings 16, verses 28 through 30. But just because it took a little longer, never forget the pattern. God's judgment always prevails, and Omri's house didn't escape it. And that's where it's important for us to pay attention. History has a habit of repeating itself, and just because we seem to be on top of the world today, we must remember our sin will find us out. Whether individually or collectively, if we're not faithful to the Lord, we will not escape his judgment. As noted yesterday, the rise and fall of nations is inevitable. And sadly, the same can be said for some Christians and local congregations. Even though everyone sins and needs the grace of God, we cannot continue in sin so grace may abound. Romans 6 verses 1 and 2. That's why God constantly calls on those who would belong to him to turn away from the world and live in obedience to his commands. Christians and churches who don't won't escape judgment. His judgment will fall on us if we don't live obediently today and every day. Thank you for watching Morning Minutes in the Bible. Until next time, this is James McClenny hoping you have a great day.